Middle Podcast, the podcast dedicated to the music, movies, and culture of Generation X.
What are your plans for the future? Spend as much time possible with Diane before she leaves. Seriously, Lloyd. I'm totally and completely serious. No, really. You mean like career? I don't know. I've thought about this quite a bit, sir, and I would have to say, considering what's waiting out there for me, I don't want to sell anything, buy anything, or process anything as a career. I don't want to sell anything bought or processed, or buy anything sold or processed, or process anything sold, bought, or processed, or repair anything sold, bought, or processed. You know, as a career, I don't want to do that. So my father's in the Army. He wants me to join, but I can't work for that corporation. So what I've been doing lately is kickboxing.
What is up, slackers, and welcome to another episode of the Stuck in the Middle podcast. I am your host, Jason Eck, and there was a couple of, scathing articles that were written in response to a Scooby Doo series that came out, I believe, on HBO Max, and it was written by Mindy Kaling, who is most, I think, well known for being both a writer and an actress or a performer on The Office, as well as her own show, The Mindy Project. And the Scooby Doo kind of reimagines everything in a modern context. And someone asked this very poignant question. Who was this written for? Who was this written for? And then it just kind of tears apart just a fundamental misunderstanding of the characters, their dynamics, what made them interesting, and what made them iconic, truly. Like the Scooby Doo gang, like the Mystery Machine, Mystery Incorporated, like they are the Scooby Gang. And they had a genuine, loving, kind, true friendships, right? So this was snarky and nasty even. I didn't even watch it, I'll be honest with you, because even just reading the write-ups of how they put the characterizations together. And I thought about Mindy Kaling, and she's, Gen X. And I realized that it's possible, it's just maybe a little bit possible, that we are somewhat responsible for this crassness in pop culture. Like, did we ruin pop culture? Now, I am sitting here recording this, and if you're watching the video, which if you're watching this video, it's going to be probably months after it's been recorded, but I am wearing my own merch, which is the Slacker hat, right? And I wear graphic tees. That right there, stop. Grown man, 3 kids, executive career, and I wear graphic tees, and a lot of them will often be pop culture related. One of my all-time favorite shirts, and I can't find it anywhere, I'm sure I got rid of it, was Bob Ross Ringer tee. Happy little trees, right? So I really got to thinking that we kind of are the problem. So who is this for, right? That it has to be our fault because we're adults and many of us have or continue to watch cartoons. Now, I actually haven't watched much in the way of animated series, probably other than stuff that I watched with the kids. Not much of anything for a while, an occasional animated movie here or there that are more adult. When I say adult, why are there rated R DC cartoons, right? DC Comics cartoons. Why is anything related to Superman, Batman, Flash, etc.? Why are they rated R? So that goes once again back to our sensibilities and how even comic books were really changing for our demographic and for our generation. It's this cynicism. It's this need to make everything darker. it's the whole, Gen X is all about irony, right? Of course, Alanis Morissette, coincidentally, I guess, maybe, had a whole song that was a misuse of irony. But I kind of look at it that we have kind of caused this shift in what popular culture is like, and how things that would have at one time been kept innocent, if you will, have been subverted. Because instead of having cartoons of famous, well-known characters, they're always trying to talk on these multiple levels. Now, there's always been multiple levels to some extent in cartoons, things that we probably didn't pick up on when we were younger. But honestly, I've watched some of the cartoons from when we were younger. There's really not a lot of subtext there. It really is presented so earnestly, right? But let's just use, I don't know, He-Man, right? Those He-Man cartoons. Now, you could say that the writers, the creators were somewhat tongue-in-cheek about the potentiality of some homoeroticism, right? Maybe. But I pretty much think it was more an homage to characters like Conan the Barbarian, and that wasn't existing in the show. But we want to go back as a culture and say, look at all those things that we missed, right? Look at all these things that were there that we weren't even seeing, that were right before our eyes. No, that's our cynicism. That's our own injection or even projection of the things that we might be thinking about at any given time and saying, oh, well, that's this, that's that. Oh, I know what they really meant there. And that permeates to this day. And I think about how even with my own kids, and I remember a friend of mine saying, that sarcasm and kids don't mix well. So one of the things that I wish I could go back and do is be a little bit more earnest with my own kids and maybe not as sarcastic, but it came so naturally, and kids don't always get sarcasm. And it wasn't until, a couple years ago, as they're older in their teens, they're like, yeah, Dad, you were kind of like a dick sometime. And part of it was because they thought I was being mean. And I wasn't. I was joking, right? But completely deadpan. Kids don't get that. And kids don't need that, right? So I think about all of the dialogue from the movies of our teens into our 20s, right? And how that has shaped and shifted dialogue in films permanently. So Cameron Crowe, all of his movies, they had a certain parlance and a certain pacing of the dialogue and the language. And it's all very self-aware, very meta before it was meta. Even take a movie like Singles, right? There's the whole basketball scene. You know what I mean. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting which basketball player. It's Portland. Oh my gosh. No, the Seattle Sonics. Was it Sean Kemp? Who was it? Oh my gosh, ridiculous. But like those kind of things, breaking the fourth wall. Like that's so obviously a sensibility of our own. You put in Singles and it comes up with, single basketball cards. Oh gosh, I can't find it. It'll hit me later. It'll be like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I know who that was. It wasn't Sean Kemp though. All right, I got to get over it. But it looks like I am stuck thinking about it. But anyway, but all of that language, right? All of that language and how it's used. Quentin Tarantino. Now, obviously, this was more on the really graphic side of language, but he was taking everything that he had, been studying in films and all these little pieces here and there that he was putting together, but he was drawing on so many different genres, really, and dropping in his most colorful language as possible. But there's also the fact that everything that we kind of enjoyed from childhood did get quote unquote updated or rebooted or remade. Some of it worked really, really well. Some of it worked terribly. But was there a need for the Brady Bunch movie? Now, I loved it. Gary Cole as Mike Brady. Shelley Long as Mrs. Brady. But that was implying things, right, that didn't exist in the TV show. The TV show was played straight. Like they were playing it straight. It wasn't meant to be, you know, all these little in-jokes and these little kind of nasty barbs and asides that they kind of incorporated into it. They were reading into what could have been present in the family. Yeah, there was sibling rivalries, and yes, there was like issues with Jan and Marcia, right? But they amplified that to such a level. And what they did was they took direct scripts right out of the original series and somehow just tweaked it, made it a little bit darker, made it a little bit more, I'm using the word subversive, but it gave it a kind of biting edge that still worked for the movie. It did ultimately still have a resolution that was a Brady resolution, right? It was positive, right? It had a happy ending. But even our happy endings have to have these kind of weird, I don't know. It can't just be a linear kind of feel-good story. I think we kind of shit on that a little bit. It's not as enjoyable if it's played too straight. It seems corny or it seems cheesy. So we have to go ahead and add things in. Give it a little bit of spice. Give it a little bit of that Gen X something. And I think it's not that it's like damage that's done, but can you watch a movie that's played as straight nowadays? If it's not like completely a dramatic film, right? You can take a dramatic film and play it straight, or even an action film or whatever. And they could do some stuff that's like over the top. But all of those things that are a little bit more, I don't know, middle of the road stuff, even our middle of the road stuff isn't really played without this little biting edge to it. So if it's not specifically family friendly fare on purpose, I don't know. I kind of feel like we've ruined pop culture in some way. We've given everyone this kind of social commentary that has to come through and everything. And I think about latter era shows too. A show like the Gilmore Girls, right? That's all about the clever language. But even like the banter on all the CW shows, that's like straight out of our playbook. The Kevin Williamsons, the Kevin Smiths, the Quentin Tarantinos, the Richard Linklater. I mentioned Cameron Crowe, who is a boomer, but like wrote a lot of movies and directed a lot of movies from, you know, our era, our time period that were, you know, clever language, even, you know, Spike Lee, John Singleton. They're all writing things from this generational perspective. And I think we're kind of messed up in that regard. And what have we done to future generations, right? So all the subsequent generations all put the blame on the boomers, right? And I will agree all day long. I have said enough negative commentary about boomers and impacts on society. You know what I mean? Like, Woodstock, like such a huge boondoggle of capitalism and commerce, like immediately. And it's meant to be this festival of love, right? So that in of itself, okay, maybe this is where it's starting, right? It's starting from that shift from the Vietnam era, going out of the hippies when all the hippies became yuppies, right? And I think that becomes clear in, you know, like, not even latter era, like early era, like Scorsese, right? And, Coppola. Oh, there was someone else that was just like right on the edge of my brain. But like that was like the start of it, right? It was like inundating society slowly with this kind of caustic, like putting the mirror up to society. Now, that's always been done, but again, it's the difference between seeming somewhat vengeful. Are we vengeful against slights, real or perceived? Like, okay, here we are, stuck in the middle. And this is our way of lashing out at the world. It's verbally, right? I think we all have, for the most part, a very biting wit. Now, there are some people that I've come across that are very, very earnest from our generation. My wife was, and now she's been in New England for 20 plus years. And my gosh, we've ruined the Midwesterner. By the way, the Midwesterners, no offense if you're listening to this, you're not as nice as you think you are. You're extremely passive aggressive. And it comes across as being super friendly. But I'm thinking about all of these reboots and remakes too. Like, that's for us. That's for our benefit. It's for our viewing pleasure. Now, it's marketed in such a way that it's supposed to be for all generations, right? But come on. You're going to tell me that all the stuff happening with Star Wars isn't specifically targeted to some extent for us and then our kids, because the theory is we've probably shared this with our kids. And Star Wars is obviously a unique phenomenon, but I remember when The Force Awakens came out, I was so stoked because it was J.J. Abrams. And okay, Disney, you got this. You're going to do this. And I was hoping that there were going to be elements of things that I was interested in because I'm a nerd and I read all the Star Wars extended universe stuff. So I was really curious about how it was all going to play out and who everyone was. And then you get to Last Jedi. I don't know. And then obviously Rise of Skywalker. I mean, they didn't play enough fan service, honestly. And, you know, a couple of my kids watched all of the Clone Wars stuff, like everything, and Rebels, love it. I'm like, what did you do? Like, what did you do here? Sometimes it works as long as it's not done as intentionally trying to either be an outright remake. I don't think those work as well, although occasionally they have. You know, the Last House on the Left, I haven't seen the updated version. I've heard it's really, really good. I think we talked about that on the horror episode where the original is just the precursor of what we would call torture porn in the early 2000s, right? But I think about stuff like Mad Max, Fury Road. You have a different actor playing the title role, but the story is so good and so driving. And it wasn't meant to be like, hey, be exactly like Mel Gibson's characterization of Mad Max. It's more that this could be an alternate dimension or alternate reality, whatever it is. And that was so clever and so well done and such a nail biter that I think it got accepted very easily. Now, I will be the first to say, and maybe I'm an anomaly in this particular regard, but I liked Solo. I liked the movie Solo. I liked it better than the last two Star Wars movies. Now, barring like the Mark Hamill stuff. Like, Mark Hamill was great, but we wanted to see Luke Skywalker being a badass, not this hermit. We didn't want Luke as like Yoda, because at least in the prequels, we got badass Yoda with his lightsaber, right? We didn't get like badass Luke at his best. It was force projection Luke. Oh, well, that's an amazing use of his power. Oh, it's so amazing. No, it's not. We wanted to see him like kick ass with his lightsaber, right? To be badass Luke Skywalker. We didn't get it. So that fan service piece went out the window. And then again, it's because Rian Johnson is Gen X and was like, oh, I'm going to fuck with your expectations, right? Just to be contrary, just to be a pain in the ass, just to be so very Gen X and just like thumb your nose at like the whole thing, right? Ridiculous. But Solo, completely different actor, but I loved the backstory. I thought that, oh my gosh, Childish Gambino, why do I only know his rap name? Oh my gosh. Oh Come on. So silly. I know his name, but it's not coming to me. Donald Glover. Oh my gosh, Donald Glover. Of course it's Donald Glover. Anyway, his Lando Calrissian, I thought was excellent. A believable younger Lando, right? But then like some people were reading too much into potential political elements and elements of feminism and like transhumanism and like all this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, it ain't that deep. Like, I'll give it credit. It was very much just a Star Wars story. Played it straight. It was fun. Like, what's the problem? It set up this huge cliffhanger and then they just took it away. But like, think about it. Like, Heathers, Scream. Scream is back. Heathers, they did a stage show. A stage show. Right? Okay, let's put it on Broadway. Talk about like this weird thing of capitalizing on a remake or an extension. But think about on television. They've rebooted MacGyver. It was short-lived. I didn't really watch it because I don't know how you have MacGyver without Richard Dean Anderson. Let's see. Somehow The Simpsons is still on the air. It's never stopped. Who's watching that? I'm imagining Gen Xers. South Park is always getting new viewers. I haven't watched South Park in a long time. So what are the ones that have been remade? Well, okay. Netflix or all these different streaming platforms. They're taking just shows from back in the day and go, okay, we're going to transport them into 2020 whatever, and we're going to put it out there. Why? Because it's still marketable. It still sells. Because again, they're expecting that we're sharing these things with our kids, and the kids are going to go, oh, that's pretty good. Now they get their own version of it. But doesn't that just mean that we, our generation, commercialized and commoditized our entertainment more than anyone, when in theory we were supposed to be the counterculture generation, but we weren't. We were for like 5 minutes, right? It was a slight rebirth of punk through grunge, right? And then it was immediately off to the races. It's your Urban Outfitters, your Alston Beats, for those who know, like those kind of places, big corporate commercialized versions of counterculture. And we bought it up in droves. I'm sorry if you ever wore a pair of Jankos. You were part of it. I never wore Jankos. Doesn't mean I didn't wear baggy pants. I did. But everything that we did went from being kind of underground to the underground became mainstream. And then it was everywhere. That's, look, I'm not saying that wasn't always the case to some extent, but I really think that it escalated. And we are definitely a generation of kids who haven't grown up. I will tell you right now, I was going to get myself some water, because I always have some water here when I'm recording the show. I'm going to take a sip right now, as a matter of fact. And I go and I look in the cabinet, and I have a choice of a couple of different drinking goblets, some drinking implements. And I had a choice, and one of the things that was up there is a Macho Man Randy Savage water bottle. I'm a grown man. Why do I own a Randy Macho Man Savage water bottle? Because I'm a fucking man-child. I think that was 2 F-bombs this week. I apologize. But nevertheless, like, I see grown men. Look, I have a Dragon Ball Z t-shirt. I enjoy anime. Why is a grown man wearing a Dragon Ball t-shirt? Dragon Ball t-shirt. I remember a couple of summers ago, I'm out. We're in Nebraska. My wife's family is. This was one of the last times we were all getting together before her dad passed away. And I am sitting there on my phone playing Don't Starve Mobile. If you know what Don't Starve is, it's a great game. It's available on all platforms. Go and I would recommend it on Steam. It's a little bit difficult on the little tiny screen. It's not bad. But anyway, I'm gaming. I got a Dragon Ball t-shirt on. I'm like, and my daughter just looks up and goes, look at this child that is my father over there. Like a big teenager. And honestly, my brain says I'm 18 or 19 years old and my body says I'm 70. And I think many of us feel that way. But what is it that's so unique about us that it seems to be that we have held on to so much of the things that we found to be comforting in our youth? Now, I don't know if it's because many of us were latchkey kids and that we were left to our own devices. So TV, music, movies were, for lack of a better term, our babysitters to some extent. And therefore, there's a certain comfort that comes from it. I know, broken record me, where it's like, had a troubled upbringing, but media was such a release and an escape that I do have fond feelings for it. You know, saw someone the other day with a Thundercats t-shirt on. I'm like, frickin' A, Thundercats is awesome. Right? Like, we ruined pop culture. We dumbed it down. I am an executive for what I do. And I hate wearing a suit. Hate it. I liked it for like a minute when I was like super corporate. And I'm like, oh yeah, I want to wear a suit. I'm going to look sharp. And I did, and I do when I dress up. I clean up nice, as they say. But I would be much happier. Honestly, like during the summer, it's all casual. And I dress very casually. I love sweatshirts and jeans, and I love sneakers. I love kicks. I got so many. I'm not exactly a sneakerhead because I don't spend thousands of dollars on them, but grown-ass man that's got to have white leather with whatever the black accent is, right? So I got the white leather, black stripe Adidas. White leather, black stripe Pumas. White leather and the Converse. But like actual Converse. Not like the Chucks. Like real Converse. Right? The cons. I had my eye on the Reebok. White leather, the black stripes. And honestly, even though they've been around for like 50 years, I have yet to plunk down the money for the Nike white leather with the black swoosh. Anyway, I'm a grown man. I'm just talking to you about like my sneaker choices because I haven't yet gotten to the point where I'm going to wear like the New Balance 560s or whatever they are. I hope I never get there. You know what I mean? And what's amazing is that all of these sneakers have the orthotic insoles now because they know who they're selling it to. They're selling it to just man babies and women babies that we are that are ridiculously childish. And, you know, I had this one boss one time. He was a big boss. He was a regional boss. And I maybe even said this before on the show, but his whole thing was always dressed to the nines. Oh, the only time that I'm not in a suit was I'm out on my yacht. I don't think he said yacht. He might have said boat, but fine, whatever. It's a freaking sailboat. Really? At least have a freaking speedboat. You know what I mean? Like a bay runner. Do they still make bay runners? Probably. But he's like, because, as they say, casual clothes, casual minds. Yeah, I have a casual mind. I do. I have a casual mind. I think about stupid shit. I do. Okay? Now, sometimes I'm a deep thinker, but that's not for this podcast. For a different podcast. Do I have opinions about things that happen in the world? Yes. But how the hell can you take me seriously? Do you know what I mean? We're casual. You know what I mean? You tell me there's a way to have a suit and it's sweatpants and not actually be a sweatsuit, but like, you know, you're dressed. I don't know. I guess that's like a tracksuit. And I think that was kind of like a hot thing for a minute back in the day. What was that? Late 70s, early 80s. But I don't think that'll be as accepted if I showed up to work in a tracksuit. But think about how that even permeates to this day. Now, some of you out there right now might be like, I love to put on my suit and tie every day. Well, that's awesome. Good for you. That's great. I do it. It's kind of expected. But I also have facial hair, which the company that I was at for a really long time, that wasn't allowed. You could only have, if you wanted to have facial hair, just a mustache. Now, let me tell you, with my face and my jawline, if I have just a mustache, I am the sleaziest looking dude you will ever see. I rocked just a mustache for a couple of minutes in the 90s. Not a great look. And man, if you can pull off just the mustache, kudos to you. I cannot. Not a great look for me. But some people say, you know, having facial hair, like somehow that's a bad thing in like the workplace. But for me, if I could say that as long as you are reasonably presentable, look, I can't imagine going to the office just doing what I do. And I'm not even going to get into that. And I really haven't talked about it on the show, but I can understand why it would be difficult in the environment that I operate in to be completely casual all the time or wearing a ball cap all the time, which is why I would love for the podcast stuff and media stuff that I do to be a more useful, well, actually any stream of monetization would be lovely, because I'd be much happier just sitting in a pair of jeans and I got a pair of Adidas sandal slip-ons, the slides right now. So I don't know. I just heard about that Scooby Doo thing and I'm like, that's our fault. Like, we kind of have created a Peter Pan culture. You know what I mean? Like, I really do feel like we've created kind of a Peter Pan culture, and the whole concept of, and I've poo-pooed it as an overall ethos for Gen X, this whole whatever thing. But I do think there's a certain casualness that comes along with it, and a certain kind of, like I've said a million times, you know, snarkiness, and just a kind of caustic, abrasive view of the world. While at the same time, I feel as though there's this tremendous amount of cautious optimism that kind of floats under the surface. And it's like we can't actually take positive things too seriously because we're always expecting the other shoe to drop. I think reflexively, at least I am. And the people that I know of, you're kind of like, okay, well, just, hey, things are good right now, but just settle down. It's not gonna stay this way forever. So just wait a minute. And I think that is a indelible part of our generation. And whatever that means for our legacies, I don't know what that is, but I certainly see the effects on the socio-political scale, and even the approaches to debate that happen. Kind of our fault, I think, because it has this undertone of malice towards those we disagree with. And I think that is, unfortunately, one of the lasting impacts, because you can only be so sarcastic before it just becomes your normal tone. And I know I've gone through phases where every other word out of my mouth was kind of sarcastic. And that's not valuable. That's not a reasonable way to order society, where everything just has to have that little dig, right? It has to be that little something that kind of turns it on its side and makes it a little less, not even positive, and I don't want to say earnest again, but just real. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain. I think some of you are listening to this and they go, what has he been rambling on about this episode? And some of you are probably going, yeah, I get it. I get it. Why are we this way, Gen X? Why? Why? why have we ruined media, right? Why can't we just enjoy things at face value, right? I just feel like we can't just enjoy things for face value. I know that I feel those moments when I like go to a concert, which is so rare. But when I do, I'm fully in the moment, purely enjoying being there with, thousands of people. And the thing is, chances are there's going to be some part of the stage rap that's going to have some bite to it, right? Not mean-spirited, not malicious per se, but just have that, I don't know, that Gen X wit, which is accompanied by a very sharp tongue. Or I completely see the world through my own lens. Well, I mean, I know that I do. We all do. And maybe I'm just clueless. Maybe we are really just inheritors of a culture that was already broken. And because of that, we have become somewhat of the harbingers of things to come for future generations. Like we're just screaming it out there saying, hey, this is how the world really is. And we're just going to tell you flat out, this is it. For better or worse, this is the world we live in. We see it all. We see the commercialism. We see the crass sellout of so many things. All of our favorite artists that once they got out of the underground and into the mainstream, immediately you call them a sellout, right? They didn't sell out. They just bought in, right? And yet some of those same people are the ones who are telling you to vote this way or vote that way. And it's just like, no, you can't have it both ways. You know what I mean? You can't say that you're like counterculture and support things that are, regardless of how you vote. Give me a break. You're not counterculture. You're not part of any resistance. You're not a part of any movement. You're not. You're just part of the system. And I think that's the part. I'm laughing when I'm thinking about it because as I'm hearing myself talk, I'm like, yep, here's the Gen X stuff. Yep, here it is. That's what it sounds like. It's like, give me a break. You think that you're somehow, oblivious to all this, that somehow you're above all this, that you're impervious to the whole thing of the almighty dollar. And I guess that's what it is. Like we just call it like we see it. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's how it is. It's just that when I just, oh my gosh, the first, 3 episodes of the podcast, right? And I'm trying to get some traction on social media. And I get some comments on the Facebook page. I was really excited to listen to your podcast. And then in like the first 30 seconds, there's like 2 ads. And I will tell you that if Gen X is anything, they're not about ads and selling out. And I just read that comment and said, I'm sorry. Are you 40 some odd years old and you're still trying to maintain that kind of anti-everything mentality? I don't understand that piece of it. You know what I mean? Like, I get the tongue-in-cheek nature of it, being like, oh yeah, I used to be into punk rock. I used to go to the underground shows. I did. I saw bands before they became the bands, right? And that's awesome and all that. I can go all day about how I was cool before it was cool, man. I was like a hipster before there was a hipster. But it's like, come on. I'm a grown man. I got kids. And I'm going to go pull that. Can't believe you had ads in your podcast. What do you want me to do? Same person goes, well, if you want to make money, you should just put it behind a Patreon. Why? Why? I might do Patreon someday, but the amount of work that's going to have to go into that to produce exclusive, interesting content. When I said I wanted to do Patreon, if anyone was interested to hit me up and no one responds, why am I going to put in the extra work and put in the extra work and still not get paid for it? Right? I continue to do the podcast at this point because I do genuinely enjoy it. I like joining here with you, once a week and just talking all my bullshit. Anyway, I know this is a rambling episode. I guess they all are, because whatever's going through my brain at the moment comes out my mouth. That also is probably the Gen X thing, where things come out and you go, oh, I wouldn't have said that. All the time, right? Can't help myself. But do I have it right? Do I have a handle, a perspective on who we are as members of society? Do I have it right how we may have inadvertently negatively impacted movies, music, TV, culture with our cynical ways? I don't know. Let me know. How do you let me know? You can email me at stuckinthemiddlepod@yahoo.com. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at StuckPodX. Head on over to the Facebook page, Stuck in the Middle of Gen X Podcast. Please like, share, comment, leave 5-star reviews, and most importantly, please subscribe to the podcast. So until next time, later, slackers.